Alright, 10. This lesson we'll be looking at world climate zones in week 5, term 2. Our learning intention this lesson is to develop our understanding of the different climate zones around the world, the classification of climate regions, so tropical, dry, temperate, continental, and polar. So different climates around the world. Obviously, different countries have different weather patterns, different temperatures, different levels of rainfall. And that's not random. That's not just something that's occurred randomly. It's because these different countries, different parts of the world, are located in different climate zones. So once you look at the map on the next slide, you'll see that the world is basically split into these different layers, or different bands or levels, whatever you want to call it. And these different climate regions are called tropical, dry, temperate, continental, and polar. And then each of those regions obviously has differences in terms of the temperature, the rainfall, etc., 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 and we'll look at that this lesson. So last lesson we looked at what is a climate, and now we're looking at the different types of climate. Trying to keep it nice and simple, trying to do it step by step, as opposed to just kind of leaping into the end of the textbook. Success criteria: hopefully by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to identify the world climate zones, right there, and connections between climate and well-being. Lots of connections, lots of interconnections in geography. It's all very much connected. So, before you finish up with this slide, I highly recommend, I command, not that I can do much from a little laptop when we're not in school, that you watch these two videos here, these two links here. First video link talks about different world climate zones around the world. It's a bit over the top dramatic. It's like an action film, like a super serious narrator speaking. Anyway, but this channel, Geodiode, I've actually got a video for each type of the world climate zone. So you can see they've got their tropical rainforest one there. It's really useful. It's just each of those videos is like 10 minutes long, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So I recommend you watch this one here, which is kind of like an intro. It talks about the different world climates and the different differences within those world climates. So I highly recommend you watch that video there. The second link is from the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia, so BOM. And they talk about specifically why we have different climates in Australia, so just giving you a local case study. So I highly recommend you watch those two videos, 4 minutes, 3 minutes long, before you move on to the next slide. So, speaking of slides, the causes of climate variances around the world, so why we have different climates on this map here, well, there's a couple of reasons. And we're not going to go into the science behind how altitude, wind patterns, latitude, etc. changes the climate of a place, because that's far too complicated for one lesson. It's far too complicated for someone who's not a science teacher. But the causes of climate variances around the world are altitude. That one's pretty straightforward. If you've been to somewhere very high up, if you've been to the top of a mountain or something, it's going to be colder. There's going to be less air. It's going to be harder to breathe up there. So obviously it's going to have a different climate if you're in a village or in a country that's very mountainous versus being at sea level. Wind patterns. How much wind you have, where it's coming from, if it's really, really strong wind or if it's very gentle. Latitude. That one's pretty straightforward. Basically, wherever you are on the map, so if you're in the middle of the world, if you're in that sort of latitude region, you're going to get more sunlight, which means it's going to be hotter, and obviously that's going to change your climate. Air pressure, and then geographical features like oceans and mountains, all of those things can change the climate of the world. The key message that I want to get is your latitude, so your location on the globe, will impact the sunlight and the weather your region receives. So if you want to think about what causes climate variances, changes, that's probably the key message you take away from this list here, is basically wherever I'm located on the map, and you can see it better when we get into the next slide, that's going to impact the amount of sunlight I receive and obviously the weather I receive. So there are 5 main climate zones around the world: tropical, dry, temperate, continental, and polar. These climate zones have different climates and characteristics. So rainfall, temperature, wildlife, location. Bonk. There we go. So I've got quick little definitions for each of these world climate zones here. So tropical, basically in a tropical climate, you've got very little variation in temperature. It's always going to be high temperature. It's always going to have high rainfall. And they're located near the equator, so the middle of the world. So you're looking at countries like, or regions like South America, Southwest Asia, or Central Africa. Dry climate zones. High temperature, low rainfall. They also have very low humidity. You're looking at very much desert type environments, located just below and just above the equator. And this map might be a bit small, so I'll take you guys over to this one here. So you can see I've got my legend over here. So the tropical ones located at the equator, and then these dry climates, these desert climates, are located just above and just below the equator. And places like Australia, obviously, Northern Africa, and the Middle East. Temperate's kind of like the middle. It's the average. So average temperature, you're going to be experiencing the 4 seasons in these locations. So that means that there are changes in temperature and rainfall throughout the year. It's not like, the Amazon rainforest where winter is still pretty bloody hot. And they're located in regions like Europe. Pretty standard average temperature in Europe. It very much changes throughout the seasons. Eastern China and New Zealand. Continental. Significant variation in temperature and rainfall. So it changes dramatically from the summer to the winter. So it can actually get quite hot in summer, but in the winter it's hella cold. But it's usually a largely cold environment, and they're located just below the Arctic Circle. And I'll show you where that is on the map, but you're looking at Asia, North America, and Western Europe. So, continental, we're looking for that purple color there, and you can see it's located around Asia and North America. Temperate, yellow and green. New Zealand's just been covered up by my little cursor. Sorry, New Zealand. Sorry to my students from New Zealand. There we go. And then Europe, got some temperate over there. Pennsylvania, Mr. Tapley's old stomping grounds. Anyway. And then finally, polar. Extremely low temperature, below freezing point. Lands covered in ice and snow, located at the North Pole and Antarctica. And I should be able to show that to you on a map pretty easily. Oh, except this map's cut off Antarctica. That's embarrassing. Alright. So that's a bit of information about world climate zones. What you're doing this lesson, a couple of questions in your digital notebook. I advise you to read pages 180 to 181 to complete the following questions in your notebook. I'm not doing that just to make you, practice your reading skills. I'm doing that because, this information should help you guys understand world climate zones. Obviously, the information in the textbook is a bit more detailed, so I recommend you go read the textbook before attempting these questions, not after. So question 1, how does climate impact the distribution of human population? So that's taking a little bit of what we've learned this lesson and last lesson with the marginal climate regions. So how does the climate impact the distribution? So where and how many of people are located in a location? Question 2. Why are people migrating to regions previously considered marginal climate regions, unsuitable for human settlement? So what's causing people to move into these places, these marginal climate regions that aren't really fit for human life? Question 3. Using the HDI index, and we've used this website a bit in term 1, where it shows you the HDI, the human well-being levels of different countries around the world. Using the HDI index, record the HDI level of the following nations. So you've got South Africa, Canada, Brazil, Germany, Pakistan, Indonesia. What you then need to use is source 4.7, which is this map I've been referring to. It's also on page 180 of your textbook. So using this map, record the climate zone of these nations. So in your digital notebook, you'll have South Africa, HDI of X, and you'll say climate zone. If I look at my map, find South Africa, use the legend, write it down. And then 3b, to what extent do you believe the differences in human well-being in these nations are connected to their climate? So you don't have to give me a sentence for each of these nations, just give me like a general summary statement overall. So is the climate zone of a location around the world, any location, impacting human well-being? So are countries in tropical climates going to always have higher or lower well-being than a country in a temperate climate? So hopefully looking at those examples there will help you answer that question there. Then I'll show you what the HDI website looks like. The link is in the slides. It's also on Compass, but this should look familiar to you. If you just click on Let's say Germany, because that was one of our examples. I think it was. And then we'll watch the Glen wave of the internet move very slowly. So there's my HDR level there, 0.939. 1.0 being super baller, perfect utopia, and 0 being trash, Mrs. Tapley's old house. So that's what you're looking at for the HDR website. The textbook, this is page 180 here, if it lets me scroll down. And you can see that's the map that I've been using on the slides. And a bit of information about how climate impacts well-being, so that should help you with those questions. If you have any other questions, guys, please let me know. Yeah, best of luck. Cheers.